We're back in the building again, gentlemen. Thank you again for being here. We're going to get into this topic today. It's identity. It's a massive topic. I've got so much questions to ask. I don't know how it's going to go. It can go one way or the other, but let's really just get into it. A bit of a definition as well about identity. The definition of identity is who you are, the way you think about yourself, the way you are viewed by the world, and the characteristics that define you. So that's a definition that I found online. There's so much in there, but let's really get into this first question. Big question. I know some of you are not ready, but who gives you your identity?
Who should give you identity?
Well, if you want to rephrase the question, but my question is, who gives you your identity?
Wow. I think the problem that we find as human beings at the moment is that we try to mold ourselves around our environments.
Yeah.
And that's where we try to create our identity based on the people that we're around, if that makes sense. So,
Wow.
who gives you it is another question.
I think personally, in terms of Yoko, it should be your father. I think a father should give a child their identity as a son or a daughter. And I think when that's not there, there's a gap there. So you see a lot of young men that will turn to the media. So they'll dress a certain way based upon social media or their favourite rapper. They'll talk a certain way and have certain slang words and how they speak based upon their environment rather than what they're in at home. And even with daughters, I think a father should give a daughter their identity. When I think about identity, I think about royalty. So if you look at someone like the Queen and Prince Charles, they're given their identity from a young age. This is who you are. You're royalty. You can't go certain places. You can't talk any way. You have to dress a certain way. This is your identity, and they're taught that from a young age, and it's ingrained in them. Unfortunately, I think in most families, they don't have that. I think last episode, well, the 2 episodes before, we had about fatherhood, and when the father's not there, gangs will give you identity, because I think with identity is linked to affirmation. So father give you identity, then you're trying to always get affirmation from a father or a fatherly figure or the mandem. And identity could be, how many girls numbers you got, bro? Identity could be, how many girls you slept with, bro? Because you slept with bare girl, that means you got a good identity. You're the man, that's your identity. Do you know what I mean? And then again, the whole rat race thing about how much money do you make? That's your identity. What car do you drive? That's your identity. What clothes? What chains you got? What watch you wear? So, but to answer your question, the father should do that.
Okay, but a little bit controversial then. You got no father, like you came into the world. Unfortunately for you, your father might have passed away. So, and you've got no family. So, in that scenario, how do you create your identity? How do you form it?
So, and this is where I think where we slightly get lost as people, because yes, our father can give us some of our characteristics of what our identity is, but that's still his identity. It's not your identity. Now, I personally think, and this is my personal view, is that you've got to have an element of self-awareness. So, for example, I might go into a shop and I'd be like, all right, I really like this top. Whether I buy it is a question for me, because I might say, all right, then I like it, but James don't like it, so I'm not going to buy it. But I know I like this top. Does that make sense? But then am I being true to myself when I don't buy this top, because that's what I like? Does that make sense? I might like, for example, going out and just going for a walk, and James might come around me and I'm like, you go for a walk, blood? Fix up, man. And obviously now I'm like, I don't want to go for no walk, blood, forget that. But then we start to change our identity by moulding into the people around us. Does that make sense? But then you've got to be true to yourself. And I'll give you an example with church. This is why I've always said I have to be real to my identity when it comes to church, because when I first came into church, I remember when I first came in, everyone was in like suits and whatnot. And I'm like, rah, I have to wear a suit, 3-piece. And I'm like, I have to be this godly man. And after a while, I'm starting to feel like, rah, there's a conflict going on within me. I'm like, that's not who I am. Like, let's keep it real. I like rap music. I like just being myself. I like gym. I like.
Hold on, you're Christian and you like rap music.
This is what I'm saying. But then when it comes to it, but even now, I tried to do that. I didn't like it. But all these things I try to create because that's what the environment I put myself in, and I try to be like them, and I realize that's not me.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, you know. I think identity, when we look at identity in general, we do focus a little bit more on the what than the who, you know. I've always had a statement say, you know, you don't know who you are, do you know whose you are? But obviously, as Nathan's posed, he said, well, what if you don't know your father? What if you don't know whose you are? Because that is the case for a lot of people out there, and they will never know their actual father. For us, we kind of lean into, okay, God is our father, and we get an element of identity from there. But that's only a seed. And that speaks to what Antonio was saying. It's only a seed. So the seed which we begin with then has to grow elsewhere. So the identity is dependent on where you place yourself.
Come on.
And when you speak about the environment, realistically, it's hard because when you do place yourself in environments, the environment may and technically should change you if it's strong enough.
Yeah.
You know, because I think of Tarzan. Tarzan was a boy. But what did he think he was? He thought he was a monkey because the environment he was in and the people he was around and the way they developed was in one particular way, even to the way his bone structure now began to change, just based on his environment. Wow. So it's identity for me makes me a little bit cautious because it makes me think about, okay, although I've got all these seeds in me from my father, from my forefathers, okay, certain environments are going to shift that so that it doesn't then pursue purpose. I'm going down our path that I'm not meant to be in. So identity speaks to not just the seed placed in you, but where you place your seed.
Good.
Yeah.
Just to jump in on that as well, because I'm going to read off example.
Woo!
Where you said that, I think is very true. When I was 5 years old, I was in year 1 in school, my first time in school. The school I went to was an all-white school. There was two black. I was one of only 2 black people in the whole school. So the 5 years old, as you know, you do the colour. You put a line, colour it green, the blue sky, the yellow sun, and all the kids are out drawing themselves
In pink.
Pink crayons, and then I'm looking at the pink crayon. I said the brown crayon. I was looking. It's a whole identity. It's what you said because of the environment, and it goes to the point of sometimes you know who you are and who you should be, but you don't feel comfortable or you want to fit in with everybody else, even though you know it.
Because of the environment that you're in.
In that first year, I actually used a pink crayon. I ain't gonna lie to you. First year, it wasn't until the year. I don't know what happened, but the year after, I picked up that brown crayon and I called it in it, and I felt good because I remember taking a paper and you go to the teacher's desk and handing your work. But it took me a while to feel comfortable knowing that I'm different, but it's okay to be different because sometimes your identity means, especially as Christians, we're actually called out to be different. So whatever that looks like, I think we're meant to be different, whether you're meant to be an entrepreneur rather than employed or whatever the case may be.
Okay. We talked about father is part of the one that gives you identity. You talk about environment, and then you talked about race. Let's go into the next. Antonio, I know you're going to say something. We've got 3 so far.
I think this is a thing that I personally found hard, and sometimes people can come in and see your identity before you do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I'll give you an example. There's 2 people that I have to really respect on my journey when it comes to this. One was Malika and 2 was Jade. Because Malika first seen me in a point where I was in heavy road, wanted to be this whole gangster, and he's coming up and like, that's not you. And I'm like, hold on, wait there, hold up, this is me, like. He's like, no, that's not you.
You got G-checked.
G-checked, but in a very subtle way, and because this is a man that I seen was around the man them, but it wasn't the man them. Does that make sense? So I'm like, yo, you are comfortable who you are, like, what's in you then, like, and that made me want to explore it. But
shout out to Malika McDonald.
Yes, listen. And then the second one was Jade, which I love her to bits, and the reason why is because I remember being in a dark place where I've just come off road, and I'm like, raw, like, okay, boom, that's who I was. This was Scorps, tough guy.
Wow.
What? And she's like, no, you're Antonio.
Yeah. That's good.
Okay.
That's good.
Name
So,
change.
something in the name.
In the name. So even now, she's like, I won't call you Anton. I'm not gonna call you Anton. You are Antonio. That is your birth name.
Wow.
Okay, and she's like, hold up, there's something in you. It's not this. I don't want to see this. But obviously, my identity was this. So I'm like, hold up, so what did you see then? And she's saying, I've seen what's inside your heart.
Wow.
So I'm like, well, okay, cool. Like, okay, so
deep.
what is that then? I started the journey.
I love that because when I said seed, I didn't know it was going to come out my mouth, but it's making me think now exactly why we said it, because you can plant a whole load of seeds. Say you plant a cluster of mustard seeds and put a rose in amongst it, okay? Everything's going to grow together, but once you start to see everything to grow, I guess to the experienced eye, you know that the rose isn't meant to be there from early, but to the eye that doesn't necessarily see it, you don't wait till everything sprouts. So for us, most of it's till we see ourselves in the mirror and see what it is. Oh, I'm not meant to be here. But at the same time as well, to the experienced eye, to Malika, to Jade, they saw you from early and said, you know what? This seed's not meant to be there. That seed's meant to be elsewhere. And it's exciting me because when I'm thinking about my own identity, I had a similar experience. I used to be Alex Leon online. That was me. Snapchat, Alex Leon online. We get up to all debauchery, you know what I mean? 6 a.m. hot tub. And 30 minutes later, you'll see me in a place that takes 40 minutes to get to. It's like, how did you do that? Yo, you know how I do it. Then going out for Nando's, bowling in the day. I was living the life, you know, everyone knew, yo, Alex's life is lit. But then I remember one situation in church, and I was praying and about the altar, I was praying, and God just said to me that I need to like accept who I am. Although I was using Alex Leon online as an alias, I needed to be Alex Leon Morgan. You can see all my handles now, Alex Leon Morgan, cheeky plug. But from that day, I accepted it almost like a name change, almost like biblically when God changed the name of many different people, you know, Abram to Abraham, do you know what I mean? And this is it. He's changing the name back to what it should be, or back to where it's going to take me next. Like, I love how you start getting called Anton and start getting called Antonio, because it pulls you out of who you thought you were, but who you're meant to be. So identity, man, identity.
So the funny thing is, and this is where I first immediately met Nathan Dennis, because I don't think people know that Nathan Dennis was my first counsellor. Funniest thing. He taught me about this thing where it was the fruits and the roots. And sometimes we literally get caught up with, or the fruits, and not actually see what's beneath that, which is the root. Now, we might be, I don't know, let's say, on underground we might be strong, confident, whatnot. But on the surface, what people see is all these things. But sometimes we've got to check ourselves and say, okay, what is actually our root? What's deep down beneath this stuff? Because the real harsh reality is, if you go to a point where your root is strong, your root can go through anything. Even if you put this fake facade, and it's what I like the picture of the concrete with the root under it, and it bursts through. Because whatever facade you put, your roots will show regardless. Does that make sense?
Boy. Everyone's stumped.
I love that, and it's the example of the bonsai tree, innit?
Yes.
It grows down, 3 years first, down, before it then shoots up. But when it shoots up, it grows like every 4 hours or something, it grows exponentially. So I'm talking about roots now.
As on the flip side, because you talked about identity and people calling you out, but with identity it can be a flip side where people are trying to almost hide or take away your identity. And I give you an example. Watch the film 12 Years a Slave. You seen that? If you remember, my man, he was a free man. There's an actual scene where he's in the room, he's being beaten, and he said, "What's your name?" He goes, "I think it's Solomon." He goes, "No, what's your name?" And he's beating him until he accepts that my name's no longer Solomon, and his identity is taken away. And I bet metaphorically, sometimes we can go through life, as you just mentioned, where life can beat you up to the point where you want to lose or change your identity. So maybe, I don't know, again, you were an entrepreneur, because you had struggles in a business, now I can't do that anymore. Maybe you were in a relationship, but now, okay, because you had bad issues and problems, I don't want to do that anymore. Maybe because you were married and you had marital problems, you know, I don't even marry no more. I want to change my identity from married to being single or divorced, because life has a habit of beating you up. But I think, as you mentioned, we have to be aware of who we are and have that strength. And you've both mentioned having certain people around you that will say, you don't need to make that decision. Don't change your identity. This is who you really are. Do you know what I mean? Go ahead.
So I'm going to ask you guys a question, because on the back of that, when you are conflicted with your identity, and sometimes I've known, and I'll keep myself real myself, there's points where I've felt like it as well, where, let's say, for example, church, we might be out in the world and doing things and be like, you know what, I don't feel good, this isn't who I am. But then we'll avoid the scenarios that we'll be in, if that makes sense, knowing that your identity might be not fitting with the environment that you're putting yourself in, if that makes sense. So how do you guys how would you guys give anyone some environment or some advice on how you maybe feeling when you're conflicted with your identity?
Do you know? I was gonna say, like, just growing up in church, me, because I come from Bethel, so I was a Bethelite. Do you know what I mean? So,
strong roots.
So, like, when I was young and I first got baptized, like, as an identity, you can't go cinema, you can't go certain places, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that. Most of my life, as you said before, so I had to kind of fit myself into a box almost.
Yeah.
But then, as I got older, I think it's more in my late 20s. I am who I am. Yeah. And I think what most people struggle with is that we try to have an identity where we try to please everybody.
Yeah.
But the reality is, no matter what identity you have, somebody will complain, someone will be offended, someone won't like it. So you might as well just be who you really are anyway, to be honest with you. So as long as, from my situation, as long as I'm in line, then I'm cool. I was like, I can't do this, I can't say that, I can't, like in Bethel, you couldn't drink alcohol. So I can't do certain things because my identity.
Yeah.
And then people will judge me, and it's always thinking about other people. But I think if you live in your life to please other people, is that your real identity? Because shouldn't your identity feel natural anyway? Because who you are?
I think it's almost like it's like a fork. It's got many different prongs to it. Because if you work as a teacher, you have to uphold a certain standard, and you have to be able to be identified as the teacher. You're not going to rant with the students a particular way. You're going to identity or dress up or be or act a particular way in order for your identity to be kind of stand out. But what we are saying is that are we talking about the who's, or are we talking about the what's? What makes up our identity, or who completely we are, like the complete us? Because when Tone's saying what he's saying about going into environments and having a conflict of identity, the advice that I'd give to anybody in that moment is just very really, if you don't know who you are in that moment, I don't know what you're going to add to the environment, or whether is it a commitment where you're getting paid? Do you have to be there, or is there a conversation you can have elsewhere, or is there another way around it? Because I personally don't like to take myself in places when I'm not feeling amazing, and when I'm really at a place of contention, unless we're going to check in. If we're going to check in, I'm going to be real. How are you today? I'm not great. But then somebody might have a piece of advice for me, or even just releasing that brings you back to think. But in that moment, that's what I am. I am not great, but it's the what's. I'm thinking about the who's and the what's, the difference between those two. So you're about to jump in on that.
Sorry, because the question I want to ask is, so I'll give an example. I spoke to someone before, and I'm going to use church as an example because church is a good example where people feel like they have to have an expectation.
Yeah.
They was a churchgoer. Not consistent, but literally used to go to church. And then it got to a point where they decided, all right, they're not going to go to church for a bit, but they're just going to do what they're doing. But then they felt like they couldn't come back to church because they felt like if they're going to come back to church, people are going to judge me, or people are going to... So what advice would you give to someone that may be on that line that feels like, you know what, like, just go, or just, like... How do you relax in that type of environment?
I've got an answer for that. It's kind of two answers. It's one, if you can't go back to that same church, go to a different church. Simple as that. Again, that's going to sound very blasé, but it is, go to a different church. But then number two is as well, people are going to judge. Accept that.
Yeah.
Like, accept that. People are going to judge you. People are going to have opinions about you. People are going to not accept you as well. And I think this is one of the battles with identity, especially when we look at like social media. People do things for acceptance, similar to what we're saying. Like, we've got to stop doing things for acceptance. There's an element of acceptance that we have to have of ourselves. That's it, and that's probably the main thing that matters. We've got to stop doing things for acceptance, especially for people that don't even matter. And it sounds really like 21st century, like, don't care about them people. You know, they. Who are they? But in all seriousness, you just got to accept the fact that I may not be accepted here, but this is the best thing for my identity. This is the best thing for me, and I know I'm feeling a pull here. Life is pulling me to this place at this point in time, and no barrier is going to get in the way of that. And that was me when I first came to church, where I was wearing hats, partly because I was trying to cover up. Oh, you can still see me. What do you mean? Alex, is that you? My face hasn't changed, bro. Like, my face hasn't changed since birth. I still look the same. But to the point where I started to feel loose and started to feel free, and that freeing process now of knowing who I am, especially in this season, and there's still more character development, is what keeps me spurring on the fact that we are still developing as well. So I'm gonna throw it back at you.
I'm gonna put both of you, or all three years into this. You spoke about social media and how it can shape your identity or potentially can influence your identity. So what is it that's, for personal experiences, shaped who you are? What makes you? Makes you?
Through social media?
No, just in general. So obviously,
general.
based on there's so much influences, how do you know that your identity is actually your identity? And what shapes it?
That's a deep question.
I got an answer, but I'm waiting. We'll go around. I'll wait.
For me personally, how I know my identity is my identity. Again, I don't want to get all spiritual and stuff, but it's from God. You know what I mean? My relationship with God, and knowing who I am.
Yeah.
And having, as you mentioned before, a blueprint.
Yeah.
It says, before I formed you, I knew who you are. I knew you.
Yeah.
I already knew your identity. So for me, my relationship with God has helped me throughout my entire life and led me into what I should do. So when I'm going to go into environments which are uncomfortable, I'm cool because I know I'm walking the right way. If that makes sense. So I'm not fazed by what people think or what people say. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And I've had people in my life say, James, you know, you can't do this, you know. I did recently. I was going to Jamaica. When you go into Jamaica, yeah, just be careful what kind of things you post. I'm going to do me. If you don't like it, unfollow me.
It's them again.
I'm going to do me. I'm going to do me. Like, if you don't like it, don't follow me. Do you know what I mean? But I'm not going to conform. Do you know what I mean?
Can I ask you a question before we interject? Because I'm just thinking out loud. You grew up in a heavy church environment, especially when you're saying Gibson Road. Now, the first thing you referenced when you said your identity was God. So do you think that your upbringing, which it would influence it, but made you, help you with identifying your identity, or is it just that's you knowing who you are as a person?
2 points on that. Bishop Brooks always says, train up a child in the way that they should go, the way they go should not depart. As he says, meaning discern who that person's meant to be, and because you know that person's going to go in this path, have preparation and give them the tools and the resources they need to do that. So it's upon the responsibility of the parents to know that. That's why one thing I hate is when people name babies. Oh, I'm naming my baby Shaquanda. What does Shaquanda mean? I don't know, it sounds fancy. That's damaging, man. Nah, man. Give them a proper name, because you're going to go in line in terms of where you discern they're going. That's their purpose. You talked about before, Antonio, your name, not Scorpio, what I'm saying. So I think that's important to me. And you had another bit. What was the other part of the question?
I can't remember that bit.
That's the question.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. And also, to add to that, growing up in my life, I've always had family around me that have seen things in me and have said, oh, you're going to be this. I'm not going to say what it is because everyone says the same thing to me. Even to 2 weeks in church, I was speaking to Becca and to Elder Kevin, and they'll call it out because they'll see certain things in you, and you'll hear it as a pattern. So with identity, other people will see things in you. That's giving you hints and tips into where you're going.
I'm saying jumping, but I'm coming after you. I don't want to jump in before you.
I think based on what you've just said, that will only come out if you're in the right environment.
Wow. Yeah, you're bringing it full circle like that.
Okay, so I'm going to come back to that.
Okay.
I'm going to throw it to you. So for me, I wasn't brought up in church. I was brought up in the world.
Yeah.
Get me? I was brought up in the clubs. I was brought up chasing girls and all this type of crazy stuff. But there comes a point where you haven't met the real you yet. You haven't met the real you yet.
Yeah.
You get me? Okay, Eminem said it like this, Slim Shady.
Yeah.
Will the real Slim Shady please stand up? What a lying.
Wow.
You haven't met the real you yet. So I was in the world doing what I'm doing. It's not until I came out of there and I plugged into the kingdom of God. And God starts to tell me who you are. Your royal priesthood. You get me? You see it at the right hand of the Father. Like, I'm like, okay, this is who I am. Like, okay, cool. So the smoking, that ain't the real you. Drunk, that ain't the real you. Like, high, That ain't the real you.
Ooh.
Anxious.
No,
That ain't the real you.
no. He's got.
It's not the real you.
Ooh.
So really, the treasure, you haven't seen it yet, because now you're locked up in clay. You got this exterior on you that you've created, this image, this identity that you're trying to live up to what the world says.
Wow.
What other people say.
Sorry. So I jump in 1 second. What he was saying, I think that's it. Because you asked me the question, how do you know I got the right identity? I think when you know, you just know this is who I'm meant to be.
That's the one.
The same way that a spider is born and can do a web, it's in your DNA. The same way that a lion can just hunt because it's in you. So when you look at the picture, when you see yourself for the first time, you're like, okay, I'm not a kitten, I'm actually a lion. So when you meet yourself for the first time, you just... know.
That's
in you.
I'm going to introduce you to the real you.
Exactly.
You're talking about, with the real you, please stand up. James alluded to it, the identity identifiers. That's what parents would be there to do.
Yeah.
You need people around you in your environment to identify what those things are in you. Also, as well, one thing that we can all do, and this is taken away from spirituality, we can look at the native abilities that we have. We have proclivities towards certain things. Me as a young boy, I was very motivated. I love Martin Luther King from a young boy. Don't know why, just did. Malcolm X, don't know why, just did. Motivational speeches, social on the internet. Don't know why, just did. That's natural to me. I used to love reading the Bible at church out loud. Don't know why, just did. But these things, when people are saying, they're probably putting me in places and opportunities, giving me those opportunities, knowing what's in me, but I'm just like, I'm sitting right here. Sometimes you just know. What's amazing is we're talking almost like about an extraction process. You're pulling something out of something. You know what I mean? The refining process. Sugar tastes sweeter once it's refined. You taste sweeter once you're refined. It's not to say that the you that you are won't work in this world. Because brown sugar still tastes sweet, but it's not as sweet as white sugar. And it's not to say that white tastes sweeter than brown before anybody tries to look at my top. But it speaks to our level of our understanding of identity. Also, as well, my other point that came was we can often identify identity in a place of sobriety. We can often identify identity in a place of sobriety. So are you currently drunk on social media influence?
Jeez.
Are you currently drunk on church religion? Are you currently drunk and high on things that you're not meant to be drunk on high on things? So your perspective of identity is skewed. So now you don't know who the real you is because you can't even see correctly. This is what I'm saying. So we have to be in a place, a sober place, to understand what identity is. That's why we go to counselling or speak with people, because it brings us back to a place of balance. So now we can kind of see who we really are.
I'm going to jump in quickly. Sorry. Just, I'm going to set it straight. The extraction part, that was the key word for me. And it goes back to the environment that we're in. We spend a lot of time in school, growing up, and school system. The word education in Latin means to draw out, educare. All right, so these environments that there's schools in, and I got nothing against schools, but we got to change the way how we deliver information to our young people. It can't be force-fed information anymore. It has to be extraction. Okay, so when we start to extract, that's where we're going to see the identity cultures of the whole world start to change. So I'm just going to put a pin there and I'm going to send it over to you now.
I'm going to come after you.
So the thing is, and this is one
extraction
thing that I personally looked at, and this is the way I started to find out my identity personally, was change my vantage point. Because when I'm in the field, I can only see what's in the field. So sometimes I have to take a step back and go to the mountain and be like, all right, what's actually happening on the field? When I'm by myself and in this peaceful moment where I can see clearly, is this who I am? If I'm chilling around you guys, I know I'm going to have a motivating conversation. But I know I'm motivated so I can be in that environment. If I'm around people that just say, oh, what are you going today? Oh, no. I'm going to feel uncomfortable naturally because that's not who I am as a person. Does that make sense? I started to look at the environments around and start to analyse and say, all right then, take a step back. Is this environment for me? Do I feel comfortable in this environment or do I feel really uncomfortable? And I started to ask myself them questions, and when I started looking, I'm like, all right then, when I'm actually in that building, I don't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Even though it might feel all right, it might, for example, even with work, it might be paying me, but do I feel comfortable? Is this me? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you've got to ask yourself the question:
Is this me or just something I can do?
exactly that. And like, I'll keep it 100%.
Wow.
You guys know me.
Yeah.
I'm a multi-talented person. I can literally invest. I can do whatever. But the one thing that I know is wrapped up in my identity and I can't remove it is fitness.
Yeah.
So I've tried to get away from it multiple times, but wherever it is, someone be like, oh, yo, you're the fitness guy. You're that. And don't get me wrong, even when I step away from the identity, I might be here and be like, yo, guys, let's do push-ups. Because that's naturally in my blood. Does that make sense? So you've got to know exactly who you are, and if you don't know who you are, take a step back, change your vantage point, and look at your environment correctly and say, is this me?
Wow. Wow.
He lives in me.
Just on that, I just want to say, on top of what you just said, and I'll just go to my next point, but I just think about a pregnant woman. Once a pregnant woman identifies that she's pregnant, it's part of her identity. And I think our identity is linked to our purpose, whether it's for your entire life or a particular season. Now, when a pregnant woman is pregnant, she identifies that, as you just said. I think it's important about the environment. So when you know who you are, you won't stand for any foolishness. So because I'm pregnant, you can't smoke around me. I can't have that because of my purpose I'm carrying, and I can hinder it. So I think we have to get to a point where I know my purpose. Because I know my purpose, you can't be around me unless you're going to change to fit my environment. And what you're saying is, I'm not going to allow the environment to affect me. I'm going to affect the environment. When a pregnant woman walks in, everyone will stand up because you're pregnant. We can identify what you have and what the purpose you're carrying. So we're going to change to make you feel more comfortable. And I think what we have to do is get in a position where we're confident who we are and the purpose we're getting, that we are not feeling comfortable, but we are changing the environment. And then one more thing I want to say is this. I'm very conscious of that, and many people are watching this, so we talk about identity. And this is great. But there are many people out here, and this is what I'll come to, is that they're not comfortable with their identity. They now know their identity in different spheres, whether it's physical, whether it's race, what the cases may be, but they don't like their identity. So that image, they now look in the mirror, they now know, okay, this is who I am, but I don't want to be that.
Wow.
I don't want that as my identity.
Yeah.
And then it's funny, I was saying to Nathan earlier, I woke up this morning, I was on Facebook scrolling through, and it was a 60-second video of Michael Jackson. It showed it from a little boy, all the pictures growing up until he's an old man, and his identity completely changed. So, and this is a question I'll put to everybody as well. What do you do when this is your identity? And particularly young people, their identity is their physical looks, but they don't like how they physically look. I saw a post on LinkedIn the other day, had a black woman wearing her hair in braids, because identity in a work environment as a black person, you can't have an afro. That's not professional. You got to change your identity. You got to have braids. That's not professional. You got to conform and have your hair pressed or weaved, and be like white people's hair or Europeans' hair. So you got to conform. So what would we say to people that now, this is your identity? You may not like it, but what would you say in terms of advice? And have any of us ever been in a position where there's a part of your identity that you thought, you know what, I don't like this? And I think at a certain point we may not like, but we have to accept this part of it. Where it's how you look. You can have surgery if you want to have surgery and stuff like that. But there's certain things we might not like about us, but we have to accept as part of your identity.
So I'm going to touch upon that with school for me, and this is something that I realised affected me later on in life. For me, and let's keep it 100%, when I was dark-skinned in school, I got rinsed for being dark-skinned. I was called 8-ball. Like, literally, any black joke, it was told. And because of that, I then...
That was because it was light skin season?
Yeah, light skin, everyone actually, like, if you was dark skin, it was literally like bad. And if it was light skin, it's like, yo, you're the man. But one thing I had to do at that moment was get comfortable who I was as a person. So, like, and it might sound crazy, at the time I was very much like, alright then, and I got defensive out of it, like, alright then, I am small, I'm dark, but I'm the man. Let's keep it real. So I started to get into that moment, and I had to tell myself, but when people are trying to say things against me, I'm like, alright then, but I might be dark, but I'm cool. Like,
Yeah.
And I literally got into the point. That's why I blaze so much, because I had to get used to defending myself, but also I had to really start to understand who I am as a person. Does that make sense?
As a defense.
I might be the dark skinned boy, but I'm also extremely cool. So I also took another part of my pros and just took that in as a benefit, if that makes sense. Even when I couldn't see it at the time as the person who I was, that I was a lack in my identity as a person, if that makes sense. I had to find something else that was my pro to really latch onto him. Like, all right then, I might be small, I might be dark, but I'm the cool kid. So that's me in it. I'm gonna hold that one.
Well, even with that though, I think if you look at media now, if you look at social media now, or the world, if you're light skinned, we had it back in slavery. They had the house black people and then the field black people. If you were lighter skinned, you were more favoured, but that's society. But again, going back to who defines what beauty is. Do you know what I mean?
It's an inward job, really. It's an inward job, and it's an inward job of recognising your value and your worth. Because we haven't even mentioned that, value and worth. Because when you speak to identity, what makes my identity so important? Why can't I be like Michael Jackson? Why? Because he gets all the attention. Why can't I be like that? Because that's the question that most people will ask. Why can't I be like that? There's nothing wrong with that. He's a good role model, or she's a good role model, but ultimately it talks to our self-worth and our value of ourselves. And I think we have to ask ourselves the question: do I value myself? Do I show myself worth? Do I love myself? And that's a big word, love. Do I really understand what it means to love myself? And I think from my own experiences that I went through life, at points competing with my brother because he was cooler than I was cool. He was cooler than I was. He got all the grades. He got all the things. He was football captain, things like that. When you're a twin like that, it just hit you. And my brother knows this story, but it's a case of like I had to find out who I was. So when we went to a different secondary school, I spent about 3 years trying to find out who I was. I get in fights, I messed about, all that sort of stuff because I could hide behind my brother, but now I couldn't hide behind him in that environment. But when I finally realised who I was, and I'd say right into my 20s, I was like, you know what? I'm just leaning into the little boy that I once was. That's all I am. I'm growing that at an exponential rate now. But a lot of people, they lost that. They lost it from early. Some people, we spoke about this and we can't really get into it, but some people's identity got taken away from them from young for certain reasons. Do you know what I mean? And it's sad because now they're experienced this at such a young age that they'll never really get back to the person they are until certain things happen and take place. So I think it really does speak to our self-worth and self-value, because for someone that's gone through something younger, you got to still get them to understand that you're valued, you're loved, but you have to love yourself and value yourself first. And that would be my advice. There's so much to it. We can't change our DNA, so that's another thing as well. So for those that really do hate, and I don't want to touch on the topic too much, those who hate who they are when it comes to a sexuality type of thing, we can't change that aspect of us, but I still want you to know that you are loved. Simple as
and
that.
Valuable.
And valuable. That's it. You're precious. You're unique. You're fearfully and wonderfully made.
I want to throw something in there now, quickly on that, because you talked about young people, and we have social media, which is like a powerful tool. But with social media, I can be living one life here, and on social media, a completely different life, and that life that I'm living on social media, that is my identity. So mentally and psychologically, this is the identity I hold up. And every like I get, every comment I get, I feel that increases my value and worth. What would you say to someone that's trying to live that double-minded life?
I'll go back to you.
So the sad thing is, and let's keep it 100% real, in some element it does. Because the real harsh reality is the likes don't give you the validation, but how things are nowadays with how social media has changed heavily, your personal brand is now your social media profile. So you even got employers that now will go onto your social media profile and see who you are as a person. Does that make sense? So for one, I would say make it as synced as possible. So when you said, can a real Slim Shady please stand up, make sure when they say, can a real Nathan please stand up, it's actually you. Does that make sense? Because realistically, if I, for example, go online and you see me in Gucci, Rolexes and whatnot, and then you see me in person, you're like, hold on, wait, where's all that gone? You're like, hold on, wait there, who are you? You're not real though. So then you've got to literally sync them together and be like, all right, then if you meet me online, and most people that probably see me online will probably see the real person that they're exactly the same. So what I would probably advise people is make them sync, be authentic to who you sound. Because realistically, like, if this is who you are, I'm going to see you in person.
One day,
one day I'm gonna see you without makeup. One day I'm gonna like, let's keep it real. One day I'm gonna see you without a hat. Did you say
I don't want to shoot for something, man.
Without your headscarf on.
But the real harsh reality is just be real, accept it. This is who you are as a person. If that's not you, then there's a process you need to go through with healing and connecting back to who you are.
Which I'm calling the stages of identity. That's what I'm calling.
It speaks to authenticity. Remember I said the story about becoming Alex Leon Morgan? That's authentically me. But also as well at the same time it speaks to almost like an integrity. Like you respecting yourself to the point where it's like, you know,
talk about my values.
I see myself every single day. But the person who sees me the most and in my personal journey is God. And I say this to people, I say keep it 99. Like that's the closest we can keep it, honestly. 100. Nobody but God you keep it 100 with, really.
Let's go.
Because certain things you say don't even say, but God just knows. You know what I mean? But keep it 99, and by keeping it 99, that still requires us to have some boundaries, though, because we need boundaries. Because the reason why a lot of people do end up losing their identity is because they try to be this person over here, this person over here, when you can be the same person at the core, but just have boundaries and layers to your life. So you still see me, but you're not going to see the whole transparent me, but you still see me. There actually tends to be that's literally it. So you'll still see me through the window. So it's almost not even like a transparency; it's like a translucency. That's it. So literally, you kind of see me. You know, it's me in there, but you can't quite get in, and that's why I feel that having a circle helps me keep my identity. Because when I get to those deep root issues, I can come to my circle. And not everybody has to know, but then it still allows me to be who I am. So whereas I might say to Tone, yo, Tone, I'm going through it, you know, bro. To a next brother, I might just say, you know, I'm not so good. And to another brother, I'm going to say, you know what, life isn't amazing at the moment, but I'm going to get past it. Because the layers in which they are in my life, the boundaries set for them, and I'm still being authentic.
Can we call this 99 problems, but identity isn't one?
I like that. I like that. Just one point I just want to raise though, because I think you touched upon it, and I think you mentioned when you're in school, people called you, said you were dark skinned, so you poured on something else. He said that you were a cool guy, and I think what I want to say, we have to be comfortable with your identity as a whole, without putting on anything. So I'll give you an example. I'll give about myself in a minute, but for example, in the Bible, when Jesus spots a rich young man, says, "Go away and sell everything you've got," and he went away very sorrowful. A lot of people's identity is what they have.
Wow.
Not who they are.
What they are.
And if you read that scripture, the Bible says that Jesus looked him and loved him. In other words, he loved him for who he was without the money. There's a lot of people, their identity is because they're rich. They're not. There's a rich friend. Their identity is because they go gym and got the beach body. My hench friend. They've got different things, but if you take away the money, if you don't go gym and you go small again, if you take away the car, take away the finances, and you're left with just you, no label on, are you comfortable with that? Because some people aren't that, and they reach for other things to add on. Because I don't want to be. I want some kind of label or some kind of thing because I don't feel comfortable. If that makes sense. But I think the reality is we have to get comfortable with loving myself as I am. Because here's the reality: it says love your neighbor as yourself. How can you love your neighbour when you don't even love yourself? How can you love your wife if you don't even love yourself? How can you love your children who, I don't know, maybe you've got a big nose because your kids have got a big nose because it's genetics. But you can't even love your own kids. I've seen certain families in church where, as you mentioned, they've had two babies, one's dark skin, one's light skin, and you can blatantly see the difference how they treat the kids.
Wow.
Because it's internal. Because I don't like myself as dark skin, so I'm going to love this child more than this child.
Wow.
Because I'm talking my own identity, and now I treat my kids different.
Wow.
That's how deep it can get. Do you know what I mean? So we have to love ourselves just like this, without the label, without the gym, without the car, without the money, and say, you know what? This is who I am. I don't need anything now. Say it's just about dark skin. Dark skin is beautiful. I don't care anybody else. I don't need to be cool. I'm dark skinned, yes, and I'm beautiful. Just because the world says that, media says that. But years ago, as you know, if you had a big bottom, not attractive. But then Kim Kardashian comes along, oh, now it's acceptable. Years ago, if you had braids in the hair, it's not acceptable. Then Kim Kardashian gets braids in the head. Oh, wow! It's like, are you serious? Like, but when the world says it's beautiful, this is the right identity. Years ago, if you got big lips, it's horrible. What are women do now? Pumping up their lips. Because the world says now it's acceptable. Now this is good. You can be naked like this. So we got to get comfortable in our own identity. Not because the world says it or because you say it or because I say it.
It's
and because I'm created in that way.
Because even if the world was to say to get naked, because I see it now, it's the new thing, you know, I'm living my truth. I don't want to lean too much into it, but it's the boundaries thing. There still has to be boundaries to it. Because I think sometimes as well, people in their journey to realising who they're self, they overshare. They overshare, they overexpose. And when they overshare and they overexpose, there's damage, you know what I mean? If you're ever overexposed to light, what happens? If your eyes are overexposed to light, you know, you can damage your eyesight forever. So we have to be very careful in our journey back to identity. This is why it takes protection.
Sorry, just touching upon that, because you know what it is, that's what they perceive that people want. So that's when they tend to do it more. And I'll give an example of with my fitness journey. There was a time where I was posting loads of like topless photos, like but I started to realise, hold up, wait there, that's not going up against my value system, because realistically, I'm a man of integrity. So now I'm putting out there, but I'm putting out lust. So realistically, is this like really part of my value system? So I had to stop doing it, because I'm like, well, one, I'm not respecting my wife. And my wife, I say, yeah, go on, like, it's cool. But in the reality is, I know girls are going to be commenting. So realistically, does that make sense? Me putting more out there to then get more attention, and then at some point, exactly that. And all it will take, and let's keep it 100, is a point where you're in a low place and someone's stroking your ego, so then you start, you know, okay, so this person's hollering and my wife's one's got, and the harsh reality is that when you don't know yourself, that's when you can fall victim to some of these stuff.
And I've seen it happen countless times. I've been on the phone to a man way back in the day, and this is when I wasn't even saying, the man are telling me this, that, and I'm like, yo, because again, wisdom is something that I've been blessed with, but the guys will come to me about giving them advice, and I'm like, yo, this just doesn't seem right. But it's like, what are you putting out, man? What are you putting out? And is it a true extension of you? You know what I mean? This is why identity is so important, because I really feel like a lot of people have these social media accounts, and like you're saying, Nathan, but they don't know who they are, so they're just going to be who they think they want to be. But the issue we now lie with is that you can't extend something that you don't have. We said it before. You can't extend something that you don't have. So if you don't even have an understanding of identity, give you 2 years, guarantee your account will change. I sometimes go through people's accounts and see that, like, this is life I used to live. No judgment, just you changed. Some people shift with the culture, some people shift with a change in perspective, and you can see the difference in how people have gone. Some people have gone from skinny hips and skinny lips to thick thighs and, you know, bigged up lips. But then some people, and you can see what's influenced their identity. Whereas some people, and it's safe to say, you know, they're posting scriptures every day, you know what I mean? But you can still how their identity change, but it has to still be authentic. Authentic.
Sorry, the one thing I want to throw in there,
landing.
As we started to bring it
We're landing.
I feel like
this is turbulence.
We're landing.
I feel like I can't walk away without actually talking about titles, because I feel like a lot of times we get wrapped up in our titles.
100.
And I'll give an example. I had a conversation with a woman, and when I had the conversation, I had to reflect with myself. I had a conversation with a woman basically saying, okay, you're a mother, you're a wife, you're a worker, you work, you do this, you do that. But realistically, when you strip away all them titles, who are you? And then I sat down and thought, wow, so okay then. When I strip away being a father, when I strip away being a husband, a personal trainer, all these different things that people call me, who am I? And I had to question that.
But is it what people call you? Is that who you actually are though? But
this is the thing, it's a title that people give you. So, for example, someone might say, okay, let's give it that. In a church setting, you're a bishop.
Okay, that title, yeah, I get it.
So that, and then from that moment there, you walk in the authority of being a bishop. But then, when you take that title away, who are you? What's your value system? Does that make sense? So luckily enough, our bishop, he matches the values of what he does. But in the world, you know, there's been people where you might say it as a bishop, but then he's still going out and chopping and doing what he's doing, and it's like, well, so realistically, you've got the title.
I get,
but are you the person that's matching that title? If that makes sense. So then the question is, who are you when you strip away the title?
It's mad, you know. It's mad. It speaks to your level of influence and impact. So identity, obviously, we're talking about identity. You're saying, you know, we have to be integral in our identity, but also as well, we understand that no matter what identity we take upon, it's going to have an influence on someone else. And it's also going to have an impact on somebody else. So one thing that I've learned in my own life is that if I am who I say I am, there's going to be I'm going to have more impact in the environments that I'm meant to be in. So I very much flow with the way life leads me, and I know we're landing this plane. So I'm just saying that for anybody out there that is struggling with identity, I want you to know that when you get to the place of identifying certain areas of your life that you can that you are good at or great at, and I always say to people, lean into it. And whilst you lean into it, you'll be leaning away actively from the things that you aren't meant to be a part of. And that will bring you an element of comfort, confidence, and I guess your belief system will change towards identity and who you are.
Yeah, awesome. Closing words.
Kind of what Alex was saying. For me, I had an experience when I was redundant. I had no job, and I was kind of lost in my identity, what I should do, what to do next. And the vice pastor of our engagement, she goes, write down, go back to when you was in junior school, all the things that you enjoy, the subjects, etc. What you used to like, as you said, your skills, and lean into it to help you map where you should go and what comes naturally to you. So in terms of identity, so who you want to do, as you mentioned, I think it's good that we understand what am I good at, understand what comes naturally to me. I mentioned before, when it comes naturally to you, people always say it. Like you said, you can't run away from fitness because it comes naturally. It's just you. You know what I'm saying? The last thing I'll say is it's important to know and find your identity, because until you know your identity, you will settle for less. Wow. And I think a lot of people are living below their means, not just in terms of the house, or they're living below their means, and you will accept rubbish because you don't know who you are. But when you know who you are and your identity, you know your value, you only accept certain things. But that comes from identity.
Wow.
Yeah. Tone, closing words.
As said, I think it's just been an amazing session, and I really would encourage someone to just explore who they are, and if they personally don't know who they are right now, and it might sound crazy, model what you feel is good until you find out who you exactly are, because at least that way you can start to gravitate to some of the things that you want, because you would naturally see some of the things, some of the elements of people that you want in yourself, if that makes sense. But then you naturally gravitate to people that are close to who you are as a person. So modelling is a brilliant methodology to use as well.
Brilliant. Awesome, guys. So just some key things that make up your identity: name, environment, race, father, your roots, the words that you speak, purpose, worth, and your values. So those are some of the journeys back to identity that we talked about. And, you know, I love what you said, Alex. Identity identifies.
That's
love it. So I got 99 problems, but identity isn't one. Thank you for tuning in, guys, and we'll catch you on the next episode of No Fluff.
Peace.